exactly it. We need to stop being servile to a God that doesn't care about music. It cares about personalities. It cares about gossip, and that's fine. I mean, I read those sites too. They're funny, and it's fun to live vicariously through other people. But at the end of the day, if it kills us being musicians, I mean, that's the greatest crime.
Welcome to episode 48 of the Hipsters United podcast. My name is Chris, and joining me this week are Jason.
Hey.
Jill.
Hello.
And Andrew.
Hello.
We've got a lot to talk about this week, so let's get straight to it. A few months ago, Billy Corgan lamented what SmashingPumpkins.com had become and pledged to transform it into something that is consistent with the concepts of love, grace, and community. Not much has changed on SP.com since then, besides the artwork, and they've taken away some commenting powers from the masses, the people out in the crowd. But on September 9th, Billy made a surprise announcement of a new website called everythingfromheretoThere.com. And this website is seemingly separate from his musical web offerings, and Billy claims to focus on a discussion of mind-body-soul integration. For now, it's just Billy making daily posts, but he is taking submissions for outside contributors for the next few days or so. So I followed along with the website for a little bit, but the constant stream of pseudoscience, there was a whole post on chakras, for example, and downright falsehoods, like his quote about in ancient Egypt, it's well known that they had technologies we still do not possess. If you knew that even with today's incredible machines, they cannot recreate the Great Pyramid of Giza, would say that's an accident. That kind of stuff has turned me off, and I probably won't be keeping an eye on this space anymore. So for now, I'll turn the discussion over to Jill, who I believe has been following along a little bit. Jill, tell us about what you've seen, and what do you think Billy's trying to accomplish with this site?
That's a pretty good question because, like you said, Chris, he's made it explicitly clear that he's trying to focus on the mind-body-soul integration. And for those of us perhaps not trained in the New Age sciences may not have any idea what the hell that means. So, I guess what I'm wondering is, he's been talking really generally and kind of generically about these life principles, right? So, meeting people that have positive impacts on the world around them and, like you said, giving these sort of analogies to other cultures and Indian culture or Egyptian culture, etc. So, I think that more than anything, he's probably trying to figure out what the overarching message of the website is going to be, or kind of the editorial narrative that he's going to take with this, because I think Corgan has a lot of things to say, and he doesn't embark on a project like this without being serious. So, in my experience, and starting other sort of projects in my own creative life, I think that it really takes a while to gain a precise editorial perspective. So I'd imagine that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Like you said, so far we've gotten some news, so to speak, from the website. It's not specifically related to the band. So, he talked about at one point in his post with the allusions to Walt Disney that, the name of the site, he says, quote, is a spin-off of a book I am planning to write, a spiritual memoir that would attempt to explain my walk with God. So, I think that he's trying to illuminate some of the specific projects in his life. He wants to communicate with his fan base, but maybe not through the lens of the music. Because I think he realizes that, some of these indie rock websites or hipstery kind of websites that otherwise criticize his music aren't probably going to be covering a lot of this stuff on a day-to-day basis. So I'd imagine this is kind of like a more spiritually seeking site that is a little bit sheltered from his actual music persona. And maybe that's not rocket science, but whatever. So I think we've gotten some news as a result, and that should be interesting. But my question really is, what the heck is it going to be like in the future? Like, where is this going? Like you mentioned earlier, that he's taking an open call right now for authors to the site. So if originally when he launched the site, he made it clear that they wanted to talk about the mind-body-soul integration, why are we sort of now hearing that pretty much anyone from any walk of life is welcome to come if they're feeling called to write? And furthermore, what is going to be kind of the focus? Because he even talks about it would be, how nice it would be to have a website that discusses quantum physics, organic trends, and, he says business, art history, jazz, America, the symbol, even good parenting. Like, it seems like there's a lot of there are a lot of ideas out there, and they haven't really, or he hasn't really settled on one singular editorial narrative. I think that clarity kind of comes with time. Plus, if you're noticing, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the sidebar of the website is becoming this like mishmash of like crazy links that all of my sort of anarchist friends send me, or stuff I see is getting like really popular on Reddit as sort of these alternative news sites kind of crop up these things. So like right now, he has links up to the Whole Foods healthcare controversy, and evidence that prehistoric man used crude satellite as a navigation stone marker. I don't know, this like crazy articles. Right. There's like YouTube videos of Mozart and blah blah blah. An article about the new Cowboys stadium. Like, it's all over the globe. So
it really is. Like, that's one thing that struck me, is it's totally, like, there is no correlation between the things on here. It's kind of like the posts so far. So all of his posts so far have been very different from each other, and about totally different topics and totally different themes. And the suggested reading on the sidebar is also like, you've got everything from, there's pure science here talking about the Earth-like planet that was just found outside our solar system, to news articles. So there's one on here about the Ohio execution that was delayed by the governor recently, and pseudoscience nonsense like the Giza power plant and the stuff like that. That's like I mentioned with the Egypt stuff. It is just totally everywhere.
Well, and he.
Don't try and box Billy Corgan in.
True to the name of the URL.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I wonder if he recently has said that he made a post about what his purpose is in writing daily, and he stated pretty emphatically that the point isn't to ruminate daily, as I think he said, but to, quote, illuminate occasionally. And he uses this, like, sort of, I guess, quintessential analogy of a baby watching a baby meet a dog for the first time. Like, if that's what the concept of the website is based on, I'm confused. Like, I don't know. And I have high hopes for this. Like, I think it's interesting when people try to do things differently. He clearly doesn't have much of a motivation besides the fact that he wants to write and he wants to, like, share his ideas. So I'm curious what the motivation is behind something like this. And maybe it is based on some of the posts he's made about yoga, well, the chakras and yoga, and sort of the new wavy sensibilities of kind of achieving enlightenment about certain topics in a very slow, very organic way. I wonder if that's kind of what is the root of all of this. Because I know that whenever I take, I was raised in a fairly religious household growing up, and I also have a pretty, like, I guess, urban frame of context right now. And so a lot of times I'll go do yoga, and I'll do it with, like, teachers that have this sort of new wavy, new agey espousal of universal truths and so forth. And this is kind of what I feel like when I'm reading this website, is like you're compelled by someone who's quite passionate about what they do, and has a lot of ideas about something, but hasn't quite figured out, like, what's it all mean. So that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting, and I'm curious to know where that's going to kind of, like, lead to in the future, because he could go a lot of different ways with it. I mean, had you asked me, I guess 2.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, where I think Hipsters United would end up, I wouldn't necessarily know. So, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it can be a little bit tedious to read on a daily basis, but it should be interesting to see how it kind of plays out and what kind of people he brings on board with him, because that will really inform the voice, I think, of the website. So,
yeah, I mean, just in reading through this stuff, I have no problem with the overall message of peace and light and trying to be a positive force for change in the world. I mean, I think that's a pretty noble goal. The only thing I really have an issue with is Billy passing off pseudoscience and quackery as fact. I mean, that thing about the pyramids, it's just wrong. I mean, scientists have been studying the ancient Egyptian building methods for years, and there's actually a good article at ScienceDaily.com that talks about how the pyramids were built, at least based on our latest research and knowledge. I mean, I know Billy Corgan is an artist, and I get that being an artist often goes hand in hand with, being open-minded and being very credulous, but I mean, isn't the fact that the pyramids were built when and how they were, isn't that amazing enough in itself? We don't have to add amazing lost knowledge or, like, secret machines of the ancients and things like that to add to the mix to make it be exciting. I mean, it's already really cool that, they were able to organize 20 to 40,000 people over 23 years to build the pyramids. I mean, it took 200 years to build the Sistine Chapel, so it's pretty amazing what they were able to accomplish. And I mean, this form of pseudoscience is fairly harmless, but when Billy starts talking about energy centers in the body, that starts to kind of stray towards naturalistic healing and that kind of thing, and that kind of stuff can get dangerous. So I just hope he stays away from that kind of thing.
I think he probably will. I mean, just by sensibilities, he's very balanced. He doesn't really buy into anything completely. You know what I mean? So, and I almost. If there's anything he buys into completely, it's that, almost, because, I mean, you could argue that, Chris, that mainstream academic science is a thing into which you can buy completely or not, right? And I think, many, like we said, so much of the suggested reading links are just, like, perfectly normal news items, that Whole Foods healthcare controversy thing is like a perfectly normal, like, topic of discussion in lots of circles. I happen to agree with the stance I think Billy is signaling with that link. But point is, that the pseudoscience is like, it's there, but it's like 10% of what's going on the site, or less even. So, I don't know. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that it is there at all. I agree with you. I mean, my view is that, if there's anything you should buy into, it's probably the effort of systematized learning that our civilization carries on, and to have some kind of confidence in our conventional social means of working out truth. I mean, I think those are pretty good. The scientific method and communities of scientists that check each other's work, right? I think that's this notion that people wander in and like come up with stuff that nobody else ever thought of at all, is just, I mean, that's always wrong,
Yeah.
Like some guy coming in and saying, the Egyptians had, like, crazy machinist technologies that we don't, I mean, that's just wrong. I mean, the guy literally thinks that, like, they had the technology, and the reason we haven't found any trace of them is it all blew up. So we found no trace of it, no evidence of it whatsoever, and that's
and it's untestable. Like, there's no evidence of that at all, and there's no way to falsify it. So
that's right. Yeah. So I mean, you can't. If it blew up and there's no trace of it, well, it's like, all right, well, that could have happened, I suppose, but why should we believe it? It's like anything. There's not 100% truth of anything, right? But it's proposing things that there can be no evidence for by definition is like, that's kind of ascientific. So anyway.
But I think your point is good. Like, that isn't the whole thing that's going on here. Like, it's...
Oh, yeah, not nearly.
He definitely also has some more rational things to say.
I really liked this post he did about peace on Friday. Let me just read a little bit. This is Billy speaking. Of course, now I can't find the good part I wanted to read. Here we go. I want a peaceful life. I look around and am shocked constantly by how much I do fight and how little I get from it. Yet the idea persists in me that there are many things still worth fighting for. I am forever willing to give up my peace practically for nothing. I'm not talking about huge literal concepts and realities like defending our country or protecting our children from predators. I'm talking about simple steps and that blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Most of the major battles I have fought have been over the way someone perceives me, which triggers my need to correct them. Defense is usually the same as attack, for it comes from the same root of belief that there is an idea or principle that must be defended, or else something bad will happen to me. And he talks about, whether peace is worth giving up those things or vice versa, and how you try to decide, in a given situation. And, I think that's pretty, he's got a good, I think that's true about him. When he says most of the major battles I have fought have been over the way someone perceives me. Yeah. I think that's right. If you thought Billy Corgan was totally not self-aware, maybe there are some things on this website that would make you question that.
Well, and I think just the act of putting yourself out there for criticism is so difficult. There's another blog that I read, and I think it demands some respect, even though the indie bloggers have given him none. There's this blog that I read pretty regularly, Juice.com, and she's become kind of an internet sensation, especially in the sort of new mommies kind of community because of her experiences with child rearing and being hilarious about it. But she talks about all the time about whenever you put yourself out there, especially in the written word on a blog, presenting ideas that are not typically very popular, the sort of throwback that you get, or the lashing back from your audience, can be just really disarming. And I would imagine that, Billy's experienced that through his music and through the touring as well. But now, trying to kind of put himself out there, maybe that's his next step in confronting the demons he's had with that kind of behavior in the past, or who knows? It's just I think it's a pretty brave thing to do when you're admitting a lot of this and when you're trying to kind of go against the grain.
Well, one thing I think my first thought about the site was simply, wow, Billy is trying to write in prose. Mm-hmm. And he's done quite a bit of that before, in his blog posts on SmashingPumpkins.com, and back when he was trying to start his biography or whatever, his autobiography, his memoir. Remember around 2004 or whatever?
Yeah.
He's written a lot, but the guy is a good writer. And, but so he's kind of, I don't know, this is just a new venture in self-expression, and he's not, doing the music thing or the poetry thing or the music lyrics thing, and trying to express himself. He's trying to write I try to write in my job. Just on
express his person and his beliefs.
Yeah, when you were kind of saying, what is the focus of this website, I kind of thought, so far it's Billy Corgan's blog. Here's what I was thinking about today, and, tons of people do that, and, most of them don't have any readers, but obviously a lot of people are interested in Billy, so he's going to have readers. It's kind of interesting to think how many rock stars could do something like this, even to the extent that Billy's able to pull it off. And I would argue not many. I would think most of them, their efforts at this would be even worse. Even in the kinds of stuff, Chris, you and I are complaining about science and stuff. I wonder what crazy things. You sometimes see some celebrity pops up and they're they think. President Bush did 9/11 or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have totally crazy beliefs, and the Egypt thing is kind of crazy, but you just wonder, take random music, random musician, random celebrity, ask him to do this, and wonder what would come out of them, right? Is it going to be any better? Ask random commenter on HU, or ask any of us. I don't know. I'm sure we have.
Write a blog you care about personally.
What's that?
Or, ask someone to write a blog about how they feel their legacy should be projected throughout contemporary culture. It's just a very esoteric, kind of heady thing to do. I don't know.
One of the interesting little themes in reading no surprise to anyone who reads hipstersunited.com, a blog about the Smashing Pumpkins, but we don't reach beyond the Pumpkins to talk about other things too much. But, each of us who writes for the blog is within spitting distance of 30 years old. And so one thing we do is we read a lot of music websites that are also aimed at and written by people of about 30 years old, which is one reason why we talk about Pitchfork so much, is because Pitchfork is far and away the leading music website for people who are about 30 years old. You can go look it up on, Alexa.com, the web traffic. Pitchfork has about as much traffic as Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone is, increasingly for people who are like 45 years old, so.
Yeah.
But when I read a lot of these blogs written by people about my age, about music, and they're reacting to Billy starting this website, a thing that cropped up quite a few times is basically an expression of this feeling. God, who the hell does he think he is to be going around spouting off his opinions on this and that? Who gives a crap, And like actually some real offense being taken to the idea that, it is basically this kind of like, who the hell does he think he is? And I just, some of the absence of self-awareness by some of these people who write these websites floors me, Because, like, I'm just like, who does he think he is? Why am I reading what you're saying? All these jackasses have started some website to tell you what good music is, right? And they don't have any, like, qualification, or I'm sure they have qualifications or whatever, but they don't talk about them. You don't know them from anybody. They just show up on your Google search, And
everybody's got a live journal, or did a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, what qualification do they have to say anything? It's no more or less than Billy.
Yeah. And so I'm just, I was just shocked at how often that sort of feeling came up, and the strong, just like, screw you, like, aspect of it from these people,
And one thing I really don't get a sense of here is the sense that Billy's saying what I have to say is important because I'm a famous musician. Like he's not trying to say that what he says is correct or important because of his stature in the music world or anything like that, which is a lot better than you can say about some of these other celebrities, like you were saying, that espouse some crazy positions, like her name escapes me now, the anti-vaccination one that goes on Oprah. Jenny McCarthy. That's right.
Yeah, I think something we haven't mentioned yet is that Billy sort of compartmentalized the everything from here to there from smashpumpkins.com. So, and he's even, posting as William Patrick Corgan. When he's a musician, he's Billy Corgan, and when he's here, he's William Patrick. And so, I think he's trying to say that he's trying to make a point that he's not writing as famous musician, famous, well-known
big-time rock
star. Then that's why you should read this. He's throwing a lot of stuff out there, and
he's just another guy in the internet who has something to say.
He's got a blog now, right? Yeah. I think what's interesting about what's sort of different is that you don't. I think that, and probably one of the reasons why he's sort of separated the two is so that if you want to just be a fan of Billy's music, you can just follow sp.com, and if you want to learn about what Billy thinks and have it stir your own mind, whether or not you agree with everything or not, then you can read his other website, and then if you don't want to read it, you don't have to, and you won't. If you go to the Pumpkins website to look at music or what's the latest on the recording, you don't have to wade through posts about chakras and ancient astronauts and stuff like that. So good on Billy for sort of compartmentalizing them.
Yeah, I mean, there was the initial post or two that said, hey, this thing's out there, but besides that, there hasn't been much on SmashingPumpkins.com, and there's nothing on this website, at least as far as I can see, that points back to SmashingPumpkins.com.
Yeah, not that I've seen either. So, yeah, right.
Well, speaking of Pitchfork, as everyone out there is by now probably aware, Billy's short 6-date tour with Spirits in the Sky at the end of August was not well reported by the music press, with Pitchfork ignoring the event altogether. And the announcement of everything from here to there.com, however, was immediately greeted with ridicule, as we kind of have discussed. What I'm wondering, though, is whether this website is important enough to warrant coverage if the tour, which featured not only multi-platinum songwriter Billy Corgan, but also guitarist Dave Navarro, who has played with Jane's Addiction, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Nine Inch Nails, isn't important enough to warrant coverage. Jason, do you want to take this one on?
Yeah, maybe. You know, when I write about these things on the blog, I really do. I mean, obviously I choose to write about them, which does imply something about what I think about them, but I do try to I don't spell it out so much. I try to leave room for people to disagree, which they do. But, you know, a couple people, I mean, one in particular who I consider a troll, but, in our comments have really challenged, you know, like, what do you expect this music press to do, right? Like, because this sort of implied, like, criticism, you know, when I point out, just like you said, Chris, that the supposed music news websites haven't even told their readers that Dave Navarro is in Spirits in the Sky, haven't shared with their readers any of the music, and I'm talking about Pitchfork and Stereogum, and you know, almost all of them, frankly. Spin... It was an exception in this. Spin magazine covered sent a reporter to a concert, posted some of the music, and, you know, thumbs up to Spin on that. But Pitchfork...
They did a bang-up job.
Yeah. Pitchfork, Rolling Stone, and Stereogum, and down the line from there, you know, very little coverage of this tour whatsoever. The coverage Pitchfork and Stereogum had was only advance coverage, and it was only like... He's formed the band, and here are the 6 tour dates. And that was actually before the Dave Navarro joining the band happened, right? And it's kind of stunning for me, from having observed the music blogosphere for quite a while. Dave Navarro plus Billy Corgan is kind of a WTF, you know? That seems like bloggable meme, like, success story, you know? Like, betatted, shirtless, Carmen Electra husband, Dave Navarro, you know, and
porn star director.
Yeah,
and
award-winning porn star director.
Yeah, and bald, you know, whatever you want to say about him, Billy Corgan, right? Mopey Nosferatu poetry book writer. You know.
Uncle Fester, I've seen that reference.
It's like the coupling of these two guys, both like really, really famous among people who went through the alternative rock era. Pitchfork, no comment. Stereogum, no comment. Has not acknowledged that they played together. Not, you know, and that's mind-blowing to me because both those sites in the past have routinely covered those two men as individuals. You go in Stereogum's past, and there are like these gossip-type items just about Dave Navarro, you know, and all sorts of gossip-type items just about Billy Corgan. And then the two of them play music together.
That's not newsworthy.
And nothing. Absolute silence. So mind-blowing to me. I point this out, and some people are like, what do you expect from these, you know, music sites? Just kind of, you know, this turns into this general, you know, I'm not blind. I know a lot of people can't understand why I get upset about these things, but you know, Chris, when you I don't know if you said this to us now, you're kind of saying, yeah, these websites have it in for Billy, you know, so yes, they ignore his music and they like ding him on these gossip items, right? And so it's just kind of like that's their agenda, and we should be just like, okay, right? But I guess my ideal would be, you know, a music site that cops to its biases. I mean, look at our website, you know? It is not Hipsters United, a blog about music. Oh, by the way, the Smashing Pumpkins are the greatest band of all time. You know? That's not what it is. It's like we cop to it right out front. We're fans, right? You know, I've joked on Twitter, like, if you wanted to, you could really say Pitchfork is a Pavement fan blog, right? Like they just ran a news story this week where Ryan Domball actually said he called Pavement your favorite band, like addressing their readers. Like, okay, well, that's cool. I mean, they're kind of copying to it, you know, there. But the problem is, I mean, so that would be good, you know, to say, okay, we like Pavement, or for Paste Magazine to say, we like Pearl Jam, or for Antiquiet to say, we really, really, really love Jack White really a lot. You know, or Stereogum when those Radiohead songs came out recently and they tweeted like OMG, OMG, OMG. So it's like clearly they get it. You know, like Stereogum is like they're self-aware. They know they love Radiohead. That's good to admit those things. The problem is they don't admit it in the sense that like they're curious as to why they like those bands. They don't admit it in the sense that it has something to do with them as individuals, why they like Pavement or Radiohead or the White Stripes. Instead, they take every opportunity to couch that preference in terms of some sort of objective truth. This is manifested in so many ways, like when you assign numeric ratings to things. You know, when you list a bunch of albums and you say this is the best new music, right? That's not like, that's just different. You could have easily chosen, this is our favorite new music, right? No harder to say, but it's the best new music. And it's a constant drumbeat of, this is good, this is bad, right? They rarely, if ever, ask, why do we like these bands? Instead, the question is, why is this band so good? Everything about whether an artist's work is to be appreciated, these sites and these critics, they routinely lay it at the feet of the artist themselves, right? If Radiohead comes out with a song and they like it, it's because it's a good song. It's because Radiohead did a good job, right? The question is never, why do I, 30-something guy who came through this alt-rock, whatever, right, like, what do I see in Radiohead that appeals to me so goddamn much? That question never gets asked, right? It's like, I'm the objective music critic, and I'm just reporting to you that Radiohead's new song is fucking amazing, you know? And that's just the fact of it. And that's my problem, you know? Okay, so now think about, and I'll use Pitchfork as the example, because I know that'll annoy everyone. But, you know, okay, so let's say Pitchfork, you know, they openly kind of admit this, like, we don't like the Smashing Pumpkins thing. And I'm saying that's good to openly admit you're kind of biased. But, you know, if Pitchfork was interested in examining themselves, if they were interested in exploring the question of why they don't like the band, they would have wanted to cover the tour. You know, they would have wanted to cover the Spirits in the Sky tour. They would have been challenging themselves. They would have been asking, why do we like this? Or why don't we like this? You know? That's a totally different approach than almost all these websites take, you know? And I think they're interested in the Smashing Pumpkins. You know, I think that's clear. I think they write about the Pumpkins enough. Their interest is clear. But it seems like they just take that interest and just, you know, it's just the Pumpkins suck, and that's Billy Corgan's fault because the music is just bad, and they just suck. And, you know, that judgment is so solid now. And there's no inquiry into, like, the roots of that judgment having to do with them, the writers, at all. You know, it's 100% has to do with the music itself. And you know, just like it as a connected point, just when it comes to the Pumpkins, you know, just the way it's been going now, everything by this point in the Pumpkins' career is just being by these people, Pitchfork and whatever. It's being prejudged. You know, I mean, Zeitgeist was going to be trashed. I believe. I don't think it would have mattered what was on it, frankly. So, I mean, there's strong prejudgment going on, or things are being judged on surface items, like whether the album is free or not. You know, you can already tell that Teargarden by Kaleidyscope, despite the loopy title, you can already tell that it's headed for better reviews than Zeitgeist, purely because it's free. I mean, they received such good PR from this, like, the music's going to be free thing. It was the best round of public relations they've had in quite a while.
Since Machina 2.
And you just have to ask yourself why that is. And they don't seem to... Where is the inquiry? But why am I noticing this? Why aren't people at Pitchfork asking themselves, why does it matter so goddamn much to us whether something is free or not? You know?
Yeah.
What's the difference between spending $10 for something and spending nothing for it? You know? I mean, it's not that big a deal. And, but it's not only that they're judging the Pumpkins, they're prejudging them, or they're judging their new stuff on such surface details, but they make such a complete, confident, total judgment, and they scream it out in these, like, extreme terms, you know? when you look at Dave Maher's review, quote unquote review of the Pumpkins fall tour, he didn't go see it. He saw a couple YouTube clips and he read review, like maybe a couple reviews. It was pretty clear that he read the review by Matthew Perpetua at Fluxblog, and it was pretty clear he read the review at Rolling Stone. But that pretty much seemed to be the extent of what he linked to or knew about, and he just let loose. I mean, if you read some of the things he said, here I'll quote from my post about their review of the 20th anniversary tour. Maher denounced the tour as a shit show, claimed that Corgan had lashed out at his band's fans with an outburst, called Zeitgeist mediocre, said the band was meandering into formless noise jams, accused Corgan of ruining people's nostalgic fondness for the Pumpkins, said Corgan was cashing in, and called Corgan crazy. When you don't know much about what a band is doing, when you aren't sharing any of the music, there's just this deep hubris involved with making such complete judgment based on such minimal knowledge, And I just think it's embarrassing, and I think it's pathetic, and, that is the source of the pitchfork critique generally that we try to put out, or that I...
Well, I
don't want to say the rest of you need to take credit for my my agenda, but it's remarkable to me how like we talked about a little earlier with regard to self-awareness about people who are writing stuff about culture and then complaining that Billy Corgan, like, who's he to write about culture? It's like these people. It's like just to throw out these just total and loud and really confident judgments based on knowing jack shit. Dave Maher didn't go to see this tour. He didn't hear any of the music beyond this like YouTube clip or something. It's just he says awful sounding music. These are the reports we've been getting. No, you read like two things.
It just makes you wonder who at what point in life did some of these writers never learn about the importance of first person sources? Like, if you purport to do things of a certain caliber, and your news is trying, or at least trying to make a veiled effort, I'll give you that, to actually bring something unique to the table and to be accurate, you rely on first-person sources. Like, this is why fifth graders all over the entire country learn about writing reports with a first-hand story. Like, this is why...
What newspaper would ever run a concert review that was like, here's what other people said?
Yeah. Like, if you're a critic, don't you want to have authority?
Right.
Don't you want to be an authoritative source? When you're relying on other people doing the work for you, that's stupid.
Pitchfork has passed up 2 straight opportunities to see the Pumpkins tour for themselves, or see Billy tour for themselves. One of them they wrote about in the most scathing terms possible, and the other one they acted like it didn't happen, despite Dave Navarro being involved. So, part of the reason to document this whole thing is like what they're saying is based on almost total ignorance, So it should be dismissed. Pitchfork should not be taken seriously when they talk about Smashing Pumpkins, period, end of story. Now, people say this all the time in our comments directed to me, when I write something about Pitchfork, they're like, why do you care? I care because they're incredibly influential. You can't deny that. If you're walking down the street and Barack Obama yells out, hey, you suck, you probably take that seriously because the guy's president of the United States, right? I mean, this is the thing. Somebody made this analogy. They're like, why do you care about Pitchfork? It's like when you walk down the street if a bum yells at you. I'm saying, no, it's like if the president yells at you. That would be the proper analogy, right? Influential, powerful people in the music sphere, right, are the ones saying this. And based on nothing, based on ignorance, based on, these sort of locked-in old beliefs that they're not challenging, and they don't challenge themselves, and they don't bring themselves into the equation, and it's, I don't know. You add all that up, and I think there's a real critique of how these younger type music critics operate. Older critics, I think, generally do not fall into these traps. Gil Kaufman writes for MTV, or John Perellis, who writes for the New York Times. Can you imagine either of them, like, I read a concert review of somebody's concert.
They'd be fired.
And the concert review I read was negative, so the concert really, really, really sucked ass. It was horrible, I mean, that's just totally, it's a horrible way to operate, it's really horrible.
And I think it's important to talk about because, I mean, we're a blog about the Smashing Pumpkins, and part of the narrative and part of the story when you're covering the Smashing Pumpkins is the coverage of the Smashing Pumpkins. I mean, it's almost like when you watch The Daily Show, Jon Stewart talks about the news, but he also talks about the coverage of the news. They're both important, and it's the same case here. I mean, it may seem like it doesn't matter because these other random websites are talking badly about the Pumpkins and about Billy Corgan, but that's part of the narrative. It is important because, like you said, Jason, like a large number of people do read these websites. I mean, the thing that bothered me the most, I think, about this specific situation is that Pitchfork isn't exactly discriminating about whose tours should be covered. I mean, seemingly, when I went there, I don't read Pitchfork very regularly, but when I went there, seemingly no band is too small to get a mention about tour dates getting added to their tour. So, I mean, the first thing I thought was, well, maybe they focus on smaller independent bands that need coverage more than a big-name person like Billy Corgan. But no, when they perceive that a crank website goes up, I mean, they're all over that. So the message I get is that, Billy Corgan is an important person whose actions get covered on a music blog, but only when those actions are perceived as crazy. When he's doing something normal, like playing concerts, he's less important than any number of tiny indie bands, some of which don't even warrant a Wikipedia entry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I...
Pitchfork did give the Spirits in the Sky tour dates. I absolutely give them that much, But, the not mentioning the Navarro thing and ignoring the entire tour, which, Pitchfork themselves cited SmashingPumpkins.com as their source for their news story about everything from here to there.com, right? Well, Smashing Pumpkins was coming off like a week of wall-to-wall coverage with all sorts of media, media being videos and stuff of the, the tour with Navarro, so they had to be aware of it. Or they don't have to be aware of it, I don't know. I'm not going to imagine the Pitchfork news gathering process such as it is, but they could have been aware of it if they wanted to be.
Surely there were more YouTube videos they could have sourced for an article.
Well, in terms of, covering the reactions to the band, I mean, that's how I would put it. Part of trying to evaluate what's going on with Billy, or what's going on with, well, let's look at the narrative of the 20th anniversary tour, right? The simple part of the narrative is Billy is upset with a large portion of people who are coming to the shows, right? Well, a question to ask would be, does he have a legitimate complaint? That would be the way I would view that. But a lot of people don't seem to they don't like. He's just wrong in a lot of people's views, right? Well, if Billy is upset at the audience, he's just wrong. He's mocking the audience. That's bad, right? And my view would be, well, maybe it's possible to me that some of the audience deserves to be mocked. It's possible Billy has a good reason to be angry. And so, I would analogize that to, Billy recently expressed, he sort of offhandedly mentioned Pitchfork in a clearly displeased way, right? And if we hadn't been covering Pitchfork, people might have read that and said, why is Billy getting mad at the critics? Must be because his music sucks and they said so, But we've thoroughly documented that Pitchfork doesn't really know anything about Billy's recent music, and yet they've attacked it, in some of the harshest terms possible. So I think it's clear Billy has a legitimate beef with Pitchfork, And, that sort of conflict between artist and audience, conflict between artist and the press is, interesting. It's interesting to me. It's potentially, a big part of the story of the band. And, I think we should write about it, obviously.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. We actually have another podcast that's going to come out in the next day or two where we'll talk all about the big announcement about the new album, so keep an eye out for that one. Our closing song for this half week, I guess I'll say, normally it's this week, but we have two of them, two podcasts, so our closing song for this half week is If All Goes Wrong from Asheville, North Carolina on July 2nd, 2007. Good night, everybody.
I've written some new songs here in Asheville. This is the music capital, right? Asheville? No. Asheville. Yeah, exactly. Would you like to boo Nashville collectively? I don't know what it did to you, but... So I'd like to play a few of those new songs for you. I would like to play a few of those new songs for you, if you'll indulge me, please. Thank you. What you left behind. Aren't you tired? But then again, I'm wired for speed. If all goes wrong, if all goes wrong, we've left this time. If what transpires between crash and climb is your need. If all goes wrong, if all goes wrong, if all goes wrong with me, who will you leave? Save yourself. Will you serve someone else for keeps? Say what's left. Will you say what's kept? Nothing's free. All goes wrong. If all goes wrong, if all goes wrong with me, if all goes wrong, if all goes wrong, if all goes wrong with me, what will you leave?
The Hipsters United podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Smashing Pumpkins, Virgin Records, or Warner Brothers Reprise Records. All opinions offered by panelists or guests of the Hipsters United podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of the Smashing Pumpkins. All audio during the show is licensed for non-profit use per the terms and conditions on the Live Music Archive at archive.org. Intro music is from the Machina 2 album released for free download on the internet by the Smashing Pumpkins in September of 2000.